Okay.
Good evening and welcome everyone to this evening's licensing committee meeting. And I formally want to welcome Tak Chun Lee, who is the lawyer and working in Mrs. Zab's team. Welcome, Tak Chun Lee.
Thank you, Councillor.
So we will start by, I'm going to start by taking apologies. Are there any apologies to be registered?
Apologies
No?
from Charan Sharma, Chair.
Okay, yes, apology from Councillor Sharma. Okay, I don't have any urgent matters, so I'll skip that. Are there any declaration of interest? No. So we move on, and I have no matters to be considered in private, so we move straight on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree to those minutes, please?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you.
Agreed, Chair. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, then we are straight on to licensing policy hearing and enforcement updates, and Isabella is going to present that. Isabella, over to you, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. I've prepared the presentation for you to cover the two reports that I've written for you. Essentially, there are three different matters to cover today. So what I propose to do is take each one in turn, and then I'll take questions after each of the topics. So I'll just share the presentation with you, and hopefully that comes up in a second. I'll wait for you to give me the
Just one second. Just one second. Makisha, Councillor Anand is struggling to log in, so if you can liaise with him and send him a link, please.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. Yes, Isabella, sorry.
Okay, perfect. So can I just check that you're seeing the presentation hopefully now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much, Councillor Ahmed. So my name is Isabella Gregory, and I am Interim Head of Environmental Health and Trading Standards. So I oversee the work of the licensing processing and the licensing compliance teams. I've prepared for you a presentation to cover all of the matters provided to you in the report. So I'll take those. I'll take you to that presentation now. So starting with the licensing hearing and enforcement update. Essentially, in the period of about 8 weeks, there were 9 decisions made by the licensing committee to do with 8 different premises. So obviously, you'll be aware that we had one summary review of a premises license, which obviously resulted in 2 hearings, the interim steps hearing and obviously the final review. We've also had 3 new premises license determinations, as well as 1 variation to premises license hearing, 2 standard reviews of a premises license, as well as 1 decision as to the outcome of the temporary events notice. So you have all of the decisions provided to you in the report, but essentially what we are looking at is to see a variety of decisions. And obviously that's kind of nicely reflected in the table in front of you. And this is our standard item, and what we normally cover is also the licensing enforcement and activity in terms of the licensing compliance team. So in the period between June and September of this year, we've been focusing on our massage and special treatment licenses, so MSCs in short. We have about 200 of those premises in the borough. And for those of you that are not familiar what those premises essentially are, they are those that provide things such as massages, saunas, pedicures, or higher risk premises such as tattooists. So that piece of work is essentially completed. All of the premises have applied for the license, and they've either been granted a license for the year up to the April of next year, or they are going through the process of inspections to ensure obviously that they're meeting all of our conditions. Within the report, you would have also seen that I've provided you with a little bit of an update as to what's happening with the more of a national licensing framework. So you would have seen that the government a few years ago, I think it was about 2023, has started discussions on introducing a national framework, as at the moment local authorities and different councils are doing things differently. And the licensing policy task force, which essentially comprises of government, industry and enforcement bodies, have outlined their intentions earlier this year to modernize and standardize regulations. So it's pretty much continuing with what you might know already, as in they're proposing to introduce a national legislation framework, which will class different premises into different groups. So looking at the kind of standard traffic system, where it's expected that local authorities will be licensing premises in the kind of green and amber category. So essentially premises that we are licensing at the moment. And higher risk procedures, such as, for example, Brazilian bat lift and similar things that you might have heard of recently in the news, they'll be kind of they'll be regulated by the CQC, which is a care quality commission. And you would have heard actually in the radio perhaps and in the news recently that there's been a lot of discussion around that topic, as there has been a lot of in general concern around the safety of those practices, as at the moment things such as Botox and kind of different procedures are not being regulated because they're not in the scope of our massage and special treatment licensing. We've also been focusing on the fireworks. So as you'll be aware, at this time of the year, we are licensing about 50 premises in the borough to allow them essentially to sell fireworks. It needs to be done obviously safely because it's a higher risk activity. So we're going through the period of issuing those licenses now and also inspecting the premises to ensure that the storage, etc., is done safely. We're also continuing with some proactive work, which is funded by public health grants that we've received last year. And we visited over 50 premises so far, where we've proactively looked at the compliance with license conditions and also how they are dealing with certain issues in specific parts of the borough. This piece of work focuses on us trying to do the best we can with our license holders to essentially minimize the street drinking issues in the borough and also make sure that there is minimized antisocial behavior associated with licensed premises, especially off licenses. I've included for you also a case study on an unlicensed premises in West Ealing, and apologies at the moment I'm not able to provide you with the name of that premises. However, this case has only been in court, I think, last week. So essentially, as we do with all of our premises, we undertake routinely inspections and visits to make sure the premises not only operate in accordance with the license conditions, but obviously they are licensed. So this premises in West Ealing, we actually visited them on 3 occasions. So the first one being in July of last year. So 2024, yeah, last year, then in August, and then on the 16th of January 2025. So on each of those 3 occasions, we have advised the business to apply for the premises license, and we have witnessed that they were providing alcohol as well as late night entertainment and refreshment. Whilst the proposed license holder tried to submit the application, they weren't really taking things as seriously as we would like them to, and they obviously continued trading, which is why we decided to prosecute on that occasion. And as you can see on the slide here, the company has been fined £13,200 plus cost and victim surcharge, as well as there was an individual fine for the director himself of £6,600. And the total fine for that premises was £26,500 fines, which I think is a good example. And I was pleased to see that result because it reflects the non-compliance, the serious non-compliance with the regulations. So that's it in terms of the quick kind of enforcement, the hearings update. I'm not sure whether there's any questions that you would like to ask or whether I should just move on to our licensing policy update.
Yeah, let me ask colleagues, is there any question at this stage just on this topic? Councillor Glant, yes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, this is Isabel. So I'll just turn the camera on there. Isabel, it's a very roundabout question, but one of the questions that comes up in my ward is from, for example, beauty parlours, is that a lot of people they're complaining that a lot of people are buying products online. And sometimes these are harmful products and unregulated products. Now, one of the reasons why we presumably we license premises like massage parlors and tattoo areas and so on, is not just about the treatment they provide, but also the products they supply.
Yes.
Have you got any thoughts about that and how we could use the licensing regime to sort of help that problem?
So obviously at the moment, as I mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of the new treatments are not licensable. So we don't have any licensing powers. The good thing is that under my directorate, there's also the workplace safety and public safety team. So at the moment, because we cannot license those premises or people that supply those products and essentially carry out those treatments, we work with our workplace safety team. So when we have concerns about the safety of either the product or the practices being performed, then we pretty much use our health and safety powers to deal with it, which is, it's not the quickest of options, but it's also, it's something that's available to us. And in the absence of a better licensing regime, that's what we're proceeding with at this stage.
Okay, so you're on it, but
We are on it.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Not the best way that, you know, ideally we would want the national framework to kick in as soon as possible and license all of those premises. But obviously at the moment, we just need to wait for that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Isabella. This is something is related to what the Councillor Gallant was asking, but my question is slightly different, but it is about MSD's license. So I'm just wondering, in my ward, the business holder applied for MSD's license, but it's taking a long time. So I'm just wondering, do we need to put extra resources, or is it some special requirement, or so can we just mitigate that effect to make the applicant will get the MSD's license as soon as we can provide them?
Thank you, Councillor Margaret. So you were actually right. It does take a lot longer than we would like it to take. So we actually start reminding people that they have to renew the license in January each year. So to be dealing with it in September, it is late for us because all of those, they should really be licensed and renewed by April. However, what quite often happens is that people take time to apply for the licenses. So quite often they are late. And the other thing that we're struggling with, which delays that process, is the fact that as part of the application, they need to submit supplementary documents. And that's quite often where there's a lot of back and forth at the moment with the premises applicants, which does create delays for my team. So we are now in October, and there's a couple, I think, few very last inspections that we're carrying out, but I think we will have to toughen up a bit on enforcement, because obviously we want to bring that kind of in line a bit sooner. But you're right, it does take longer than we would like it to be. But I would say in the vast majority of circumstances, it's because there's been a bit of a failure in terms of communicating with us.
Thank you, Isabella.
Okay, Councillor Moffat.
Isabella, thank you very much for a very, first I'd like to say thank you very much for a very good report and a nice in-depth overview so far. At my scrutiny panel a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at West Ealing in a slightly more holistic sense around the kind of whole economic ecosystem. Do you think the current licensing policy supports a healthy high street in West Ealing? And do you think that your maybe slightly more rigorous enforcement activity you just referred to will improve the health of the high street in West Ealing? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I have to say, I think I'll be a bit biased because I predominantly wrote that policy that we're referring to, so I might not be as objective as I could be. But to answer your question, yes, I do think it does support it, because licensing isn't about preventing people from operating and you know, providing licensable activities. It's about those activities being done safely. And even with the case study in West Ealing that we were just referring to, you saw that the prosecution actually happened quite late. It happened after 3 visits. So it doesn't normally happen that we would prosecute on a first occasion. It can happen. It very much depends on the circumstances, but we always start with advice to people, and that's how we try to obviously help businesses in the borough and support that hospitality and the nightlife, etc., to make sure that we give them as much as support for them to operate legally and safely, and obviously in support of the licensing objectives. So I would like to answer your question as it's a yes. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ball. Can you unmute yourself, Councillor Ball? Yeah.
We're not hearing you, Councillor, I'm afraid.
Councillor Ball, we can't hear you. Are you speaking or not?
I think Councillor Ball is speaking, but we can't hear him, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, Councillor Ball, we can't hear you. Okay, we will move on in that case, and when Councillor Ball is back into the system, we can take the question. Yeah, I think you need to maybe restart or. Okay, Isabella, I think you've got a very comprehensive report, and councillors don't have any other question because you have covered almost everything. Thank you for your report. So we can move on to the next step.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So the next step for us to discuss is the licensing policy. And that policy is now effective from the 27th of July 2025. So it's essentially just a few months. And it applies to any of the new applications. It applies to any premises wishing to vary the license, and also it applies to the reviews. There's been significant changes done to the policy, and there's also been new sections added to it. So I don't propose to cover all of the changes, as obviously you would have seen those changes happening last year, but obviously I appreciate that we've got some new committee members. So I'll cover the most significant changes. So I'll take you through in a second what happened to our management conditions. I'll cover a bit on license conditions. We talk about special policy areas, as well as touch on issues such as male violence against women and girls, and modern slavery and human trafficking. And I'll talk to you about new sections which focus on events and larger venues, as well as our delivery services. So apologies, I think it will take me about 50 minutes to go through it, but I would appreciate if you just wait with the questions at the end. So starting on the management conditions, so you might recall seeing the document on the right on the slide there, which essentially was example of conditions that could be considered by the licensing committee and our responsible authority, but it also served as a good kind of guide for our applicants. So what happened is we decided to remove it from the policy to make it more flexible. So the document, when I started reviewing it last year, was quite outdated, and it was difficult for us to update it because it was part of our policy, which is the reason why we have removed it. So at the moment, that document now sits completely separate to our policy, but is still very much available to you and your colleagues, as well as anyone wishing to make an application. It sits on the same page as our licensing policy, so it's easy for everyone to find it. License conditions. So we've updated our license conditions quite significantly because we've done quite an extensive consultation with our stakeholders. So each of those stakeholders was asked to comment on the proposed conditions, and they have come back to us with various feedback. And license conditions at the moment in our policy are covered in two separate parts, which is important for you to consider. The first part is under each of the 4 licensing objectives. So it's a good reminder for you when you consider anything to do with one of those licensing objectives to look after under this section. And we also have example conditions listed under different types of different specific types of the premises. So we've added this year some new sections such as the events and the large capacity venues, which we'll cover in a second. So it's a good idea for you when you refer to the licensing policy to always look at those example conditions, as it will give you an idea of where you can think of imposing when needed. And just a reminder on the kind of license conditions side of things, it's license conditions that must be appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objective. So it's important, again, that you refer to the right section of the policy. A big one for especially me and the enforcement team is that the license conditions have to be precise and enforceable. And a good example here that I can talk to you about is something that we used to see in the past, not anymore these days, which is good. Being added to the licenses is, for example, condition asking people to notify residents in the vicinity of the premises of any kind of events happening. And as you can appreciate, that condition wasn't precise enough. It didn't allow us to ask the license holder when that kind of notice was given or how was it given and what kind of residents should be included. So that was a good example of the precision that lacked there, which obviously made it unenforceable for us. And it's very important that the license conditions obviously are tailored to the individual type, the location and characteristic of the premises and the events concerns. And it's something that you should be expecting to see from our responsible authorities, that they have really considered it when they were discussing the issue or the concern in question with the applicant, that they have made it individual to the premises. And obviously, it's very important that the license conditions are proportionate, they are justifiable, which is again a big word, and capable of being met. Moving on to our special policy areas. I understand that you have some more training after this presentation with Ms. Zepp about special policy areas, so I'll just quickly touch on those. So you might remember seeing last year, especially cumulative impact assessments being provided to you as part of those committee meetings. And essentially what we've done is we've looked at crime statistics, at number and type of our premises in the borough, as well as lots of other variables such as noise, alcohol-related submissions to the hospital, etc., to essentially identify whether we had any hotspots in the borough to designate special policy areas. So we had special policy areas, I think, since 2012 in Ealing, so quite a long time. But at the review of the policy last year, it was very clear to us that there are still kind of hotspots where the number of premises was quite concentrated, especially around the off licenses, which meant that we discussed the special policy areas with you, and essentially we have decided to make some changes to those policy areas. So without going into too much detail, special policy areas, what they do is they create a rebuttable presumption against granting of licenses in those areas where they are likely to negatively affect on the licensing objectives. So it's an important factor to stress that we don't want people not applying for the licenses in those areas, or what we're asking for is that they have to consider specific issues affecting those areas, which we've highlighted in our special policy areas, before they submit the applications or when they're going through it. So it's definitely not against issuing those licenses, it's more that the license holders have to be more responsible and perhaps take better preventative measures to make sure that they don't negatively impact on the licensing objectives. So on the slide, you can see here two maps. So you can see on the left how our special policy areas look like back in 2025. And on the right, you can see how they look now. And essentially what we've done is we redefined the extent of the special policy areas using the LSOA areas, which is lower super output areas. And please don't ask me to explain what those are. I just know that that's what we used. So these are now used to kind of create the boundaries, as essentially what we've had before was sometimes arbitrary and confusing nature of kind of where each of the boundaries for the SPA policy areas were, which was kind of quite difficult for applicants and sometimes for our licensing officers to decide whether premises was essentially in a special policy area or not. So taking you very quickly through what happened. So in Acton, we've actually removed the northern arm of the Acton special policy area along the Horn Lane. And we've included a little bit more on the south side of the A402. So the kind of the Vale area. And you can see that the most significant change perhaps happened in the Ealing and the West Ealing area. So we've decided to include the stretch of the Uxbridge Road between Ealing and West Ealing, essentially to create a single special policy area. That was mainly due to the concentration of the premises and obviously the issues that we were seeing. In Southwell, we have actually decided to remove the Beaconsfield Road section of the special policy area, and that was because we weren't seeing the issues that we were expecting to see, and the concentration actually of them off licenses in that area wasn't as high as we believed it to be. In terms of Greenford, we have actually expanded toward the southern area to cover more of the Greenford Road, as that's where we know there is a higher prevalence of off licenses, and we are seeing some street drinking and street alcohol related issues. So moving on to the male violence against women and girls, and obviously you'll be aware that Ealing Council it's quite an active local authority in terms of this topic. And what we have put into our policy is to encourage our applicants and license holders to sign up to the Mayor of London's Women's Night Safety Charter. So for those of you that are not aware of what the charter is, it's essentially a city-wide initiative aimed at making London safer for women at night, for women and everyone, but mainly for women at night. And it kind of encourages venues, operators, as well as local authorities to adapt practical steps like staff training or clear safety messaging to make sure that the women feel confident and secure at night. So where there are MVOG or male violence against women and girls related issues, responsible authorities should be challenging venue operators on what precautions and safeguarding they have in place to protect women. So what does it mean actually in practice? So in practice, what we should be seeing is that new applicants, they should be adopting best practice measures. So for example, doing staff training, for example, WAVE training, which is welfare and vulnerability engagement training. And that training focuses on identifying and responding to vulnerability in the nightlife and hospitality setting. And it's also something that can be a positive factor, for example, during license review, if you're seeing that license holder is proposing or have already provided WAVE training to their staff. There's obviously things such as Ask for Angela that we'll be familiar with, which is a scheme where if someone feels unsafe, they can discreetly approach a member of staff and ask for Angela, which essentially is a code word to make them aware that they are vulnerable. And obviously that should trigger adequate action from the staff, which is why it's important that they are trained. So for example, they should take that person to a safe place, or they should call the police or call them a taxi. We are also asking our applicants to think about drink spiking, which is, again, a kind of more of a modern issue, but it's something that we're seeing on the uprise now. And we'll be asking them essentially to make sure that the staff is trained adequately so that they recognize and spiking symptoms such as, for example, sudden confusion, nausea, or loss of coordination. And they should also be considering doing some physical measures, such as, for example, displaying safety messaging, as well as kind of offering drink covers or stoppers for people to use. Or, for example, encouraging customers never to leave drinks unattended. There's a lot that can be done by the staff members in that area. We would also want the venue design to kind of actively consider safety measures. So think about visibility, think about lighting and layout, and where appropriate, support the creation of safe havens. So for those of you that are not aware what safe havens are, they're essentially temporary refuge where people, where they feel vulnerable, they can go into that place and essentially wait till a danger passes by, or they can ask the staff member to help them. So they should have stickers in the windows to clearly identify them. We have also introduced some specific measures for our off licenses, which is again what you should be seeing in the operating schedules quite often. And we are asking our off licenses to introduce measures to prevent street drinking and public congregation, which obviously can undermine women's safety, but also to maintain adequate staffing levels, especially during evening hours. Again, it kind of links in with the women's safety. If you can imagine, if there is in certain areas of the borough where we do know that there is street drinking issues, if we have a single female member of staff, then it's unlikely that she may feel confident, for example, refusing a sale to someone that is already drunk, essentially, or under the influence. And we're also asking our off license to make sure that they train staff that they can manage the risk and also support safeguarding. Moving on to the modern slavery and human trafficking. So that is a new section that was introduced in our policy. So we are now explicitly stating in our licensing policy that we would like our license holders to consider staff training and awareness. So we would like people obviously to be trained to identify the indicators of modern slavery. So for example, individuals who appear fearful, anxious, or they're unable to speak for themselves. And we want them to have reporting protocols in place. So not only about recognizing those symptoms, but actually staff knowing what to do with it, which should include things, for example, if someone is in immediate danger, calling 999, or reporting issues to the modern slavery helpline. We are also asking our license holders to consider what they should already be doing, which is right to work checks, but also thinking about things like CCTV and regular staff patrols in the specific areas. Moving on to the events and large venues section. So this is, again, a new section that was introduced following some of the responsible authorities' feedback and also some of the comments and feedback provided by the licensing committee members. So we've introduced now this section, and essentially we ask that any events that plan to happen in Ealing and that they require a premises license, they should be submitting an application at least 3 months ahead for smaller events, but those with 5,000 people plus, which we consider as significant or major events, at least 6 months ahead. So the reason why we've dedicated those timelines is because that's how long actually it takes to put safe events on, and that's how long it sometimes takes for us to kind of be able to have essentially a good conversation with the event organizer as to what safety measures we would like them to have in place. We have also stated that we would want them to have an event management plan, and especially for venues with 5,000 people plus. You would have probably seen EMPs, in short, event management plans, already being provided to you. And those plans, they detail things such as risk assessments, crowd management, or dealing with things such as crime and disorder, noise. So it's quite a comprehensive document, which would essentially give you assurance and give us assurance that the event is going to be put on safely and avoid things such as public nuisance, etc. Event management plans, they are quite extensively discussed at safety advisory group meetings, SAG. So you would be expected, you would be expecting to see some of the feedback from the SAG being part of any kind of licensing committee hearings. But we have added that conditions stating that we would want our license holders for larger events to make sure that they run the event in accordance with that EMP, which is a big step towards safety. We have also introduced some sections on enhanced security measures, so doing things like obviously risk assessment, staff training and physical security implementation. And in anticipation of the Martins Law, we also kind of put stuff in the policy around that law. So from my understanding, I believe that the bill has received a royal assent in April, I think, this year. So we're looking at the implementation of the Martins Law in 2027. And again, from what I understand, any venue with 200 people plus will be expected to take some simple measures, such as, for example, doing security risk assessment and having some anti-terrorist and counter-terrorism simple measures in place. And those with 800 people plus, or those that can accommodate 800 people plus, they'll be expected to have more significant controls in place. Delivery services. So again, this is a new section that we introduced it, and we introduced it due to the issues arising out of public nuisance, but we also have to consider the kind of protection of children from alcohol delivery risk, because now quite a lot of those deliveries happen online. So we have now added conditions around minimizing noise and disturbance caused by the dispatch and congregation of drivers. And we are asking our license holders to make sure that they have age verification procedures in place, and there is kind of special software that they could be implementing or doing simple things such as, for example, asking for date of birth or proof of birth on delivery. We're also asking them to make sure that they don't deliver alcohol to places such as, for example, park. They should be delivered securely and obviously not consumed in public spaces. And obviously with all of this kind of staff training and record keeping. So to summarize what we've covered, I've kind of taken you through some of the kind of flexibility now regarding our management conditions. So if you have any views on those, or if you think that there should be any changes, obviously we can now easily update them. So you're more than welcome to pass on your views. We've covered a bit about our updated license conditions. And again, I would really suggest to you and recommend that you do read our license policy, especially those sections, because they are the sections that will come in quite handy to you during your license committee meetings. We've covered what happened to our special policy areas, which essentially just changed some boundary adjustment, and we have made them slightly bigger. And we've covered the emphasis on the en vogue issues and the modern slavery and human trafficking, which is new section. So it's something, again, that I would encourage you to read, as well as our event and large venue sections together with our delivery services. So that's it in terms of the policy statement, our licensing policy. Before I move on to the next item, which is the gambling policy, I saw some hands up. So Councillor Ahmed, would you like me to take some questions now?
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. Praveen, Councillor Anand, you want to ask a question first? Can you switch on your...
Thank you. Yes, I have. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you very much for the updates and presentation, Isabella. Excellent report. Thank you. Just I want to ask you two clarifications, actually. Firstly, can you please refresh or remind us with regards to when we sit in committee, what is the difference between when we are assessing a application between, I know you mentioned already with regards to that we have to see special extra measures from the applicant, but can you please refresh that part or elaborate more with regards to when we are sitting in committee with a application in a special policy area as opposed to a normal area? My recollection is that the onus is on the applicant to prove otherwise, that the application should be accepted, otherwise we are inclined to reject. Can you just please elaborate on that part, on what the major difference is as a committee member with the special policy area and my second question is more towards how we can, as councillors, sort of bridge the residents and also our policy area, how we can actually encourage our residents where they're complaining about street drinking and there is not in a special policy area. What as councillors, not committee members, we can do to actually initiate a new special policy area, how they can actually initiate that, what we can advise them, what they need to do, what evidence they need to collect, and how it's done. Thank you. Those are my two questions or two clarifications. Thank you very much.
Praveen, just to clarify, did you mean that how can they apply to make their area a special policy area? Is that what you mean?
Correct, Chair. It's just how we can assist them, that if they are complaining that there's an area that they're very upset with, what evidence they need to put together, and how they can actually then apply to the licensing authority to look at that.
We went through all that. We went through all that when we were discussing the new policy. That it all depends on the evidence. But I will let Isabella.
I just a little bit more elaboration, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm repeating, but I just
no, that's fine. No, that's fine. I just wanted to understand exactly what the question is to make it easy for Isabella.
Thank you, Chair. And I wish you both a quick recovery.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. So I'll start with your second question, which is special policy area. So thank you, Councillor Ahmed. You're right. We've just gone through that exercise, and essentially it's quite a, I wouldn't say difficult, but a evidence challenging process to introduce. So I don't think personally that a resident or a small group of residents would be able to put together a strong case for us to create a special policy areas, that they have to be essentially evidence, and we've obviously just done that. So those special policy areas are under constant review, and we will be reviewing them within 3 years because that's what the law requires us to do. But as part of us putting a case for a special policy areas, which is essentially what we had to do, was looking at things such as complaints from members of the public. So what I would advise you to advise your residents and others is that if they are seeing areas, to purely record them and pass them on to us so we can start building a better picture of the areas. Without quite often having those complaints or feedback from the residents, we don't know what the issues are. So it's very important that they do pass them on to us. Before I move on to your second question, I might just go back to Mr.
Before you move on to your next question, I think Joe want to add something on that.
I saw his hand up going up as well, so I thought I would let him speak.
Joe has been updating us on new licensing policy during the whole year, so I think he would be a good person to answer this question. Go on, Joe.
Thanks, Councillor Ahmed. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes,
great, thank you. Yeah, I've been updating you, not as well as Isabella though, but just in answer to Councillor Annan's question, the other thing I would say is Isabella's correct. The creation of a special policy area isn't a kind of thing that residents petition for or etc. It's quite a lot of work on by data analysts to look at the evidence base. And if you remember, we looked at the density of alcohol licensed premises. We looked at the incidence of alcohol related London ambulance calls, and also alcohol related crimes and alcohol related antisocial behaviour. So the thing I would say to residents is really key is to report the issues, because that is all of the things we do around licensing is based on the evidence. So they can ring 101. They can obviously, if it's an emergency or someone's safety is at risk, they ring 999. They can ring 101, and you'll appreciate as well, we've got the independently chaired safer ward panels as well, which run, so they can raise things via that direction as well. Because the other thing that we did this year a bit better than we did with the previous cumulative impact assessment was we looked at some of our own data. So we have a lot of park guard patrols and our own antisocial behaviour officers who were their observations were included as well. So my message, as it is in a lot of different forums when you see me, is please do encourage the residents to notify us using the channels that we've got, or the police, because that is the evidence we rely on. What makes it really difficult is when someone contacts us and says, for the last 6 months I've been experiencing this and this, you know, and they send an email with the narrative. That makes it really difficult for us to exercise our duties in an evidence-based way. So please do encourage them to call when they see any observations that are related to this. Thanks, councillors.
Thank you. Thank you. Isabella, you want to take the next, the first part of the question?
Yes, thank you. So, Councillor Anand, you've asked about the special policy areas. So I understand that obviously Ms. Zeb will cover that in her training, so I won't go into too much detail. But essentially, everyone can apply for a premises license everywhere in the borough. So the special policy area doesn't change it. But what special policy area introduces is that when someone puts in for application, our responsible authorities and residents and everyone else, including the councillors, can challenge that premises and say, have you considered local areas in those issues? Are you aware that we have a special policy area which covers that area? And can you demonstrate to us that you opening another, let's say, off license in that area will not add already to the existing street drinking and other issues? That's where that kicks in. So it's actually, there is a higher kind of boundary, higher than our responsible authorities would be expecting to see a lot more from premises applying in those areas, and premises license holders that they wish to open in those areas, they should be putting a lot more in their operating schedules to make our responsible authorities and essentially you feel that they understand what the local issues are and they have suitable controls in place to prevent any additional issues added to it. And one of the good examples that Ms. Blanchard quite often uses is in our West Wheeling, where we do have an area where there's a lot of licenses in a very small area. We did have an application a few years ago from a large retailer that they put in for another, obviously off license, well, a supermarket with an alcohol, but the controls they had in place were so strong that the licensing committee and obviously our responsible authorities did not have any concerns that they will add to the existing issues. They were confident that the license holder was a responsible license holder and they understood the local issues. So I hope that's sufficient for you at the moment, Councillor Anand, and obviously Ms. Zeb will cover that in more detail.
Yeah, I think we'll cover that in
good detail. Thank you.
We will cover that in training, Praveen. We will discuss that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ball, are you able to speak now?
Hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good. Okay, great. Yeah, so one of the things which I think was helpful is the new focus on making sure that staffing levels are adequate for particularly kind of late night in areas with street drinking. Clearly, in terms of new licensing conditions, that would only come into effect if there's a review or new premises. Is there anything that we can do to encourage existing licensees in these areas to increase their staffing levels?
So this was also my question I was going to ask later, that we will be obviously we can encourage those who apply new licenses, but is there any plan to write to the existing premises or is there any mechanism to encourage them?
The mechanism is all of us. So we are all here obviously to encourage our license holders to really do what's best, and it's spreading the word and it's making them aware of those issues. And it's actually part of the kind of the premises visited as part of our proactive public health fund. We are already talking to them about it. So we are already making them aware that we have updated our policy and they should be aware of it. In terms of if we saw issues, then that's obviously where we have steps appropriate to us, such as reviewing the premises license. But quite often, we would even ask premises license holders to voluntarily amend the conditions where that's possible. So starting with an informal advice, advising them of the policy changes, encouraging them to implement those safety measures before issues occur, because that's what we want them to do. But if there are issues, then essentially using those mechanisms, either voluntarily getting them to add extra license conditions onto their premises licenses, or ultimately going down the route of a review, which all of us, including our police and responsible authorities, councillors and residents can bring about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dheer.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. Can I first echo Councillor Parveen Anand's appreciation of Isabel's presentation on the changes on our policy. And I'm really glad to hear the London Mayor's charter on the safety of women and girls in relation to our licensing objectives. That's really welcome addition in terms of the questions we can ask new applicants. So we can ask new applicants that how would they comply with the London Mayor's policy charter on safety of women and girls. That's a wonderful thing really to incorporate into our licensing objectives. My question is that can we also, I mean, we were talking about whether we can communicate it to the existing license holders, the objectives of the London Mayor's charter, but more importantly, when we sit on applications for review and contraventions of our policy, can this be incorporated into our objectives there that we can ask the relevant license holders this question that how are they making sure that they are complying with the London Mayor's objectives in the charter for the safety of women and girls? Would that be allowed for us to ask questions in the panels that we attend? Thank you.
Thank you. Isabella, I'll take question from Councillor Bacchini as well, and then you can answer.
Okay.
Councillor Bacchini.
Thank you, Chair.
I will
Thank
remind you if you
Isabella.
forget. I know the question Councillor Dheer is asking.
No, that's
yes,
okay.
Councillor Bacchini.
Yeah, thank you. I just want also to commend the report and the new policy and thank the licensing team for their great efforts to get this together. My question relates to male violence against women and girls. I just want to clarify how the new policies will address male violence in terms of the protection of female dancers in clubs. And how this will be also implemented to the current policy holders, the club holders. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Isabella, my understanding is that these are not mandatory conditions at the moment. They are advisory, and we will be encouraging them. That's the term you used. So if I'm right, then please go ahead and we will take Tariq after that.
You're right. I think the word that I quite often is a strong encouragement. As in our license holder, they should be doing what the best they can essentially to support dealing with specific issues such as male violence and women and girls. So there's the word of it. There's an expectation. I would even go as far as, so if someone is opening, let's say, a place that has female dancers in, they should be already ticking all of those boxes. They should be already putting in their operating schedules that they have considered all of those issues, that they are part of the charter, that they have already provided the staff with training. And to kind of go back to the previous question regarding the kind of what we're doing with existing license holders, this is just the beginning of us actually scratching the surface when it comes to male violence against women and girls. We've got quite significant plans on approaching our existing license holders and actually doing some training with them, but we are very much at the very first steps of planning that training with them and securing some additional funding and planning that. So I'll probably hold off from giving you more information on it, but I just wanted to kind of assure you that it's a very hot topic and it's something that we all strongly feel about, and it's something that I'll be coming to the next policy and giving you a larger update. But I'm already have some meetings scheduled with some of the kind of key people in the council to make this happen. Actually, essentially what we want to do is offer free training to our operators where perhaps there can be male violence against women and girls issues, And for those perhaps that refuse, then ask them why. Why don't you want to do it? And that's kind of when it gives us a bit of a power to come back to there. Perhaps consider, are they actually promoting the licensing objectives if they don't want to take part in the free training and essentially do what's best for everyone?
Thank you.
I think that kind of covers all of the questions nicely, including Councillor Backlini's. But Councillor Backlini, just to kind of go back to your question regarding the female dancers, the big step is actually awareness, and that awareness starts with our responsible authorities and with residents and license holders, and that's kind of where we are at now. And I've given you a bit of a kind of short presentation on all of the policy changes, but I'm actually doing more training with the police. I'm doing more training with the responsible authorities, because what we want to see is now this policy is operational. Anyone that wishes to open let's say a club where there may be a female dancers in, our responsible authorities, they should be straight away onto it, and they should be asking some significant questions and being really reassured that everyone that is proposing to do that sort of thing, or there may be women safety considerations, that they are following our policy and they are ahead of us, if anything, and they are doing everything they should be really to make sure that those issues will not occur. Hopefully that answers both of your questions, Councillor Backlini and Councillor.
Thank you.
Just for information, the plan is that we finish the licensing meeting and start the training and finish both by 9 p.m. So those who are asking questions, just keep that in mind, please. We want to finish both sessions by 9 p.m. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Just to very clearly, I will speak quickly as you need to save a time. So just two things. Conditions. Yeah, thank you, Isabella. You mentioned 4 or 5 conditions, so we could. You are giving us an idea by sitting in a panel what condition can be applicable and can be enforceable. But we need to know more about that, and I'm sure Ms. Khatun will cover in the training, but like we need to have more update about, as a panel member, what condition we can impose and what condition we can be practical or enforceable condition. I just wanted to clarify more on that, but not on that time. But I think I will ask this thing in the training as well. So thank you for that. And Joe, you use word of independent-led chair monitoring panel in different areas. Could you tell us more on that, please?
Yeah, I can, but obviously this is licensing committee. But yes, there are the safer neighbourhood teams, and with the Met Police, there should be ward panels going on, which should cover some of these things like reported hotspots of areas. You'll also probably be aware that our borough-wide PSPO was renewed, I think just a couple of weeks ago. So that covers things like street drinking and other antisocial behaviours borough-wide. So essentially that gives the police more powers to deal with some of those behaviours which are associated with street drinking. But yeah, I can. Are you asking, would you like some details, Councillor, which I can supply you with afterwards of the panels?
Yeah, that's all right.
You can do that offline.
No
No
worries.
problem. Thank you, Chair.
And Isabella, the question, Isabella, we can deal with that question in the training on the condition.
I just want to add one thing, which is I would encourage all of the councillors to read the licensing policy in full, because it's your bread and butter really, and there's a lot of information already there to clarify a lot of your questions. And the second recommendation I always have is to work very closely with our responsible authorities, because the conditions really should be coming from them, because they are the experts in specific areas. So you should be really working closely with them and looking to them really to suggest suitable controls, rather than you going off and having to kind of do it yourselves. You are obviously more than entitled to ask questions and impose conditions as you see fit, obviously providing the proportionate and etc. But it always starts with the conversation with the responsible authorities and the applicant as to what is actually needed.
Thank you.
Councillor Nagpal? Kim, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. Isabella, I just wanted to ask the free training that you suggested would be offered. Can you tell us what that training is called? And also, are we also intending to offer safe haven training? Because I know Camden do this and they encourage premises to become safe havens. So can you give us the name of that training, please?
Yeah, so what we are actually considering is delivering the WAVE training, vulnerability and welfare and vulnerability engagement. And actually, we are very fortunate because my licensing team lead used to work for the police and he's actually delivered that training for the police, which is why we're planning on delivering it. And we'll be in a very good position to do it with our license holders. We are thinking about doing the safe haven, and we think about doing some more technical training with some of our kind of perhaps higher risk premises. But again, that's the kind of detail I'll probably provide you with at the next licensing committee when I've discussed it with partners.
Okay, thank you.
I think Joe want to add something.
I was just going to say, I was going to say this earlier. I think this sounds like a future agenda item for a future committee, Councillor Ahmed, if you agree, because what I wanted to add earlier was that I know that Isabella's working on a lot of things that we're planning in this area, whether it's the WAVE training we're going to deliver, how we're going to engage with businesses and so on. So it is difficult to answer questions like Councillor Nagpals at the moment probably wants more detail because we're at quite the initial stages. We don't want to over promise and under deliver. It needs to be in accordance with our resources. But I think with our colleagues in community safety and some of our other partners, we can put together quite a good package which we can bring to committee in a couple of months' time when it is, and give you all a bit more detail and an opportunity to sort of scrutinise what we're proposing, etc. So hopefully Councillor Nagpal will have a bit more then for you as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. We'll have more opportunity to go through this and everyone can chip in.
That training already exists, just to clarify, and it's available to all of the license holders, but we're thinking about providing it for free. So essentially there's no excuses for our license holders not to do it, because we want them to do it. We want them to follow best practice.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we are done with this part of the reports. Now you want to go to the gambling policy, Isabella?
Yes, I'll cover that very quickly. It's not a long item. So
okay, cool.
Our gambling policy, our existing gambling policy was introduced on the 29th of June of 2023, and it's not the same as in regards to our kind of alcohol and premises licensing license policy that needs to be reviewed every 5 years. Gambling policy needs to be actually reviewed a bit more often, so every 3 years. So our current policy is then due for renewal by June of next year. And just to kind of remind and refresh your memory, in terms of the gambling regulation, there is actually a gambling commissioner that regulates gambling premises at a more national level, and local authorities kind of deal with more of a local premises, so those kind of brick and mortar premises actually that operate locally, and gambling commissioner taken the kind of initiative on regulating the remote gambling. So we have about 180 gambling premises in the borough, and it's a variety of kind of betting shops, adult gaming centres, slot machines, that kind of stuff. And you'll be aware that at the moment we have currently something called the no casino resolution, as in we don't have any casinos at the moment, and we passed on a statement stating that there should be no applications in the duration of the no casino resolution. So what we planning to do with our gambling policy at the moment is only a minor refresh. So we potentially just change the template and just update the bits that we have to update. But the reason behind it is, as in April 2023, I think there was a white paper issued on reviewing gambling reform, and actually it set out quite significant set of reforms that will be coming in to update the Gambling Act, which has been in place since 2005. So as you can appreciate, it's 20 years old. So we anticipate that there will be quite a lot of developments, especially in the online area of gambling, but there'll be also a lot of changes that will impact on how we license our premises, which is obviously why at the moment we probably be just doing the refresh of the policy and update it rather than doing a full-on review. So we would expect some of the changes actually, and some of the legislation has already been introduced. So I'm aware of some of the legislation being passed on in July of this year. And we think that there'll be more legislation introduced potentially end of next year or soon after. one of the pieces of work that I'll update you on is what we're considering doing at the moment is creating or developing a local area plan. So for those of you that are not aware of what it is, it's essentially kind of something very similar to our special policy areas. So at the moment under gambling legislation, there is no cumulative impact assessments that can be introduced. That is actually part of the proposed reforms that might be introduced, but instead Gambling Commissioner recommends that local authorities undertake a strategic view and consider whether there is any issues arising out of the gambling premises, and that they develop essentially a local area plan and they communicate it to license holders. So it should be something that the applicants will then be expected to take into account when they apply for the gambling premises, and they incorporate into risk assessments. So I appreciate you haven't dealt with many gambling applications. There's not that many actually that we receive on a yearly basis, but when premises, when a proposed license holder wants to open a new gambling premises, they actually have to include risk assessments, which is a slightly different process than our Licensing Act applications. And once we develop a local area plan, which is something that we're doing some scoping work at the moment, they'll be expected to take it into account and then discuss it in the operating schedules. So I've included for you just a kind of snapshot of a Westminster local area plan. So as you can see, they've mapped their gambling premises and identified areas where they believe that if there were more gambling premises open in those areas, then it would negatively impact on the gambling objective. So it's a very similar principles to the special policy areas without having that kind of legal impact yet, but it's something that is definitely going to be introduced soon. So this will be a good exercise for us to start identifying if there is any gambling issues in specific parts of our borough. In terms of the timeline, so we expect that we'll be kind of refreshing that policy, changing the template in the next couple of months, and I'll be coming to you in January with that refreshed policy and also with a proposal as to statutory consultation, which we have to carry out. And we're hoping then that I'll be able to come to you for your meeting in April with the representations incorporated into our new draft gambling policy, and I will be able to pass it on before 1st of June, which is essentially where we have to implement it, as we have a 4-week statutory publication requirement. So this is very much at the beginning a quick update for you that we are starting that work. We are looking to see whether we can complete a local area plan in time for January. The good thing I would say is, in terms of the local area plan, it doesn't actually have to form part of the policy. It can stand alongside it, because again, it's slightly different mechanism than with the Licensing Act, but it would be good for you to obviously see it before we implement it. So that's just a quick stop there for you.
Thank you. Councillor Nagpal, is there a legacy hand or you have a question? Kim? That might be a legacy hand. Okay, before I go to Councillor Mahmood, Isabella, our current gambling policy, does it have zero casino policy?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a no casino resolution, which we'll be looking to pass on at the same time. So the law requires us to kind of refresh it every 3 years. So we'll be proposing that we retain it. The good thing with the no casino resolution is that we can just revoke it as it is. It's actually a function of the full council rather than the licensing committee, but obviously we would want to have your recommendation to go ahead with that.
But when we say it's a zero policy resolution, can somebody still make an application and get a license or not?
So the way it works is, if someone was to submit a casino application, which we haven't had since I've been managing licensing, we would simply return it with a state saying we have passed on like no casino resolution, so you're not entitled to make that application. But I would say that if we ever got that, then it'll be a good starting point for us to start discussing perhaps about practical measures that we could implicate into our policy to lift it. But at the moment, there has been no changes to kind of any of the gambling landscape, so we're proposing to retain it.
The reason I'm asking is there was an application for planning for casino. So I don't know if the policy is zero policy for licensing, then I'm not sure why they were applying for planning. Anyway, that's not a question to you.
Mr. Blanchard wants to come in, I think, on that.
I just wanted to say, Councillor, that although that was reported in the media as a casino, it wasn't. It was an adult gaming centre, but it was just called a casino. If you're referring to the one in Hanwell.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just a standard 24-hour adult gaming. Sorry, not standard, because obviously people are very worried about it. I just mean from the application perspective, it wasn't a casino as the zero
As with
casino
the
policy would
tables and
recognise
everything.
it. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mahmood, question, please. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. Just to quickly, Isabella, you said we in London Borough of Ealing, we have got 80 gambling premises. Yeah.
180.
180. Roughly.
180. Sorry. Yeah. No. Anyway, so and you mentioned that the local area plan should be tough, and we should be the gambling premises should be responsible for in terms of antisocial behavior, not in the premises. But I just wanted to know, according to our policies, the gambling policies or a strategy, can we hold them to involve them if there is anything happening not inside the premises but surrounding in the premises, so they should be held for account?
So to answer your question, it all very much depends on the circumstances. If actually issues arise of the gambling premises, then it's something that we would most definitely speak to them about. But essentially, we need to refer back to the gambling objectives, which are slightly different actually than the licensing objectives. So there's actually three objectives there, which actually public nuisance isn't one of those when you actually look at the licensing objectives, but it's something that we could easily speak to them about. And if they're causing antisocial behavior, there'll be other issues associated with those premises. But if you're aware of anything like that, then I would ultimately just ask you to kind of pass it on, that information to us. But again, I wouldn't be able to say yes or no, because it very much depends on the circumstances.
Because I think what we should remind, Chair, what we should remind them, especially for gambling premises, they should take more responsibility in terms of social corporate responsibility. I think that should be emphasized. That's my point.
I think everyone should, not just gambling premises, any licensed premises, if you ask me.
No, Isabella, you have actually answered Councillor Mahmood's question. I'm aware of the question he's asking. The question is whether that issue is arising from the premises. So that is the main question, to find out whether it is arising from the premises. Thank you.
The key difference is that there is no prevention of public and disorder objective under gambling. So it's not the same kind of mechanism as with the licensed premises, but it's something that I can't see why we wouldn't be able to question with the premises, but it's not part of the licensing objectives under gambling.
Thank you so much. I will speak to you offline.
Okay, Councillor Anand.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to maybe this question can be taken offline, but I really want to understand the clear rationale between us being totally 100% opposed to a gambling casino. I can understand the rationale behind adult strip clubs or whatever the term is to be correctly be used. I can understand the rationale behind that, protection against women and other sort of issues. And we did have one that got closed down, and but I still want to understand the clear rationale when we are allowing gambling betting shops. Then we are accepting that we are not anti-gambling, and the fact where I actually oppose strongly, and this can be taken on account, is that when we give permission to gambling betting shops just outside a bus stop, that is really social responsibility at the poorest, totally. And I really feel that we need to take a responsibility when we actually assess these gambling betting shops just outside a bus stop. You're encouraging people. So that's one point. But my rationale that I need to understand, outside of London, central London, if we can take the lead and responsibly take the lead, I think we should be open for someone to invest in the night economy and open a casino. We should take the lead. Unless I can be proved otherwise, and I don't see that gambling in a betting shop is any different to gambling in a casino.
Okay.
Actually, in fact, the casino is more regulated because people will not just drop in from a bus stop. They will be regulated. So I just need to understand that rationale. We should be more open towards that before Ealing, before Harrow, Uxbridge, or other neighbouring boroughs take it and we lose out. Thank you.
Okay, Joe, you want to answer this question, please?
Joe, you're on mute. So before you go
Joe,
on.
Thank you so much. So yeah, casinos are recognised legislatively differently. It is one reason why we would do that. But the no casino resolution in separate to myself and Isabella is probably entirely a political decision rather than an evidential or operational reason. Isabella in her presentation has set out the kind of timeline because essentially what we're asking the committee to do is to effectively instruct Isabella and myself to go ahead and commence the statutory process for renewing our gambling policy, and a key part of that is a statutory consultation period. So I think you know, there will be questions in there and engagement around the no casino policy. So the first step, like we do with any of our council policies, is engage with residents and other people that want to make their feelings known. And I will be interested to see what the spread of opinion is of residents and the businesses who we're obliged to contact as well. And then I think I would anticipate, Councillor Anand and Councillor Ahmed can correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys as the elected members would argue this kind of motion out about whether we continue it or not. But when you do, at that time, we will have given you the information from the consultation about what the residents and others think, which I think would further inform you. And we will, of course, also finally, we will engage with our partners internally as well. So people like Regeneration, Economic Development, who may be more on more leaning towards your tone, Councillor Anand, about economic development and the after 6 p.m. policy and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of how I would answer that question, Councillor Anand. I hope that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. The final question from CN. Who is CN? I can only see CN on the.
I think that's Councillor Nagpal's.
That's not Councillor
Yeah.
Nagpal. Councillor Nagpal is different.
I think it's just here because there's no picture, just take CN on it.
Yeah. Okay, whoever has.
It's a legacy
Yes.
hand, Chair.
Okay, well, then we will move on. I think we've come to the end of the meeting. Isabella, thank you. You've been very thorough and you have answered all the questions. Yes, we are ready. The committee is authorizing for the commencement of the gambling policy consultation or whatever the process is. And yeah, there's nothing more, so we can set the date of the next meeting and close the meeting now. The date of the next meeting is 13th of January. And thank you everyone for attending. The meeting is now closed, and we will continue with our training. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.